Close your eyes. Just let them close. Release the day, all the thoughts clinging to the edges of your mind like dust motes in a sunbeam. Let them drift. You are safe here in this space, in this quiet. Imagine a color. Not just any color, but a color that feels like a memory. Perhaps it's the soft gold of a childhood summer, the deep indigo of a twilight sky, or the gentle green of new leaves unfolding. Feel that color surrounding you, a gentle warmth that seeps into your skin, easing away tension you didn't even realize you held. Breathe in deeply. And as you inhale, picture that color flowing into your lungs, filling you with peace. Breathe out slowly and imagine any tightness, any worry, any stress dissolving with your breath, carried away on a wave of color. Again, inhale peace. Exhale tension. Feel your shoulders relax, your jaw unclench, your forehead smooth. This is your moment. A pocket of stillness in a world that rarely pauses. Now let's travel. Not in a rushing, hurried way, but a gentle drifting. We're going back in time to London. Not the London of bustling crowds and modern lights, but a London shrouded in mist, a London of cobblestone streets and gas lamps flickering in the rain. It's a rainy afternoon in London, and a peculiar stillness has settled over 221B Baker Street. The city sounds, the clip-clop of horses, the distant cries of street vendors are muted, softened by the constant drumming of rain against the window panes. Sherlock Holmes, already awake before the city stirs, is the first to notice. He doesn't simply hear the weather, he feels it. On most days, a gentle tapping would announce the dawn, the old oak tree outside his window brushing against the glass, a silent greeting. Then the birds, especially the cardinal nestled in its nest almost pressed against the brick, their calls echoing through the awakening streets. It was a vivid splash of scarlet against the gray, a promise of the day to come. But today there is no cardinal. No bright blue sky peeking through the leaves. Only gray upon gray, a world softened and muted by endless rain. He often pondered the cardinal, its simple existence a stark contrast to the intricate labyrinth of human motivations he navigated daily. The bird simply was. No hidden agendas, no carefully constructed facades, no webs of deceit to unravel. Just being. Holmes often wondered what it felt like to exist without the constant need to analyze, to deduce, to know. They. Fleeting moment of envy, quickly dismissed. He had a purpose, a calling. But sometimes, on days like these, the simple beauty of the natural world offered a quiet solace. However, today was not a day for solace. It was a day for mystery. He rose from his bed, the floorboards creaking beneath his feet, and descended the stairs to find Dr. Watson already awake, lost in the pages of a well-worn novel. The two sat in comfortable silence, enjoying the quiet companionship and the warmth of the crackling fire. The sounds of the city filtered in, the rumble of carriages, the laughter of children, the calls of merchants. It was a familiar symphony, a backdrop to their quiet contemplation. A solid knock broke the silence. A knock that resonated with a sense of urgency, a subtle tremor of distress. Holmes rose and crossed the room, his mind already beginning to formulate possibilities. The man who stood dripping in the doorway looked utterly defeated, as if the weight of the world rested upon his shoulders. He clutched a worn umbrella, rainwater cascading from its folds. "Mr. Leighton Holmes greeted, his voice calm and measured. The man introduced himself, and with just the mention of his name, a story began to unfold. Edgar Leighton was a man of wealth and influence, a man who owned businesses across London and the countryside, a man whose mansion was surrounded by apple orchards and manicured gardens. But his wealth and status had brought him no peace. His daughter Beatrice, 18 years old, had vanished. "Just 12 hours, Leighton said, his voice raspy with worry. "But it feels like an eternity." Holmes, ever the pragmatist, offered a cautious question. "Are you certain she hasn't simply gone for an adventure, Mr. Leighton?" A young woman of her age, Leighton's response was sharp, dismissive. "Beatrice is not the type to run away. She is disciplined, considerate, and devoted. She is not impulsive." He explained that Beatrice followed a strict schedule, a routine that never wavered. She had few friends, all of them from respectable families, and he had already checked with them. She was last seen retiring to her room the previous night. The maid discovered her absence the following morning. "I suspect one of the groundskeepers," Leighton said, his voice laced with suspicion. Holmes simply nodded, observing Leighton's body language, his subtle displays of arrogance, his thinly veiled discomfort. He sensed a distance between father and daughter, a lack of genuine connection. He offered Leighton his assurance, promising to investigate and find his daughter. But first, he needed to see the room from which she had disappeared. The journey to the Leighton estate was a long one, the rain intensifying with each passing mile. As they approached the mansion, Holmes struggled to conceal his astonishment. He had seen opulent homes before, but nothing compared to this. The mansion was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, its windows and columns adorned with intricate carvings of trees, wildlife, and birds. It was as if the building itself was a celebration of nature. The interior was even more lavish, a grand foyer with mahogany and marble staircases, sparkling chandeliers, and stained glass windows that filtered the light into a kaleidoscope of colors. Beatrice's room was as extraordinary as the rest of the house, yet subtly different. It was filled with unusual objects, birds, nests, dried flowers, mushrooms, all collected during her daily sunset walks, according to the maid. Leighton scoffed at the mention of these walks, deeming them unladylike for a woman of her station. Watson searched for clues, diaries, letters, anything that might shed light on Beatrice's state of mind. But there was nothing, an unsettling emptiness that spoke volumes. The balcony door was ajar. Leighton insisted it was the point of entry for the kidnapper. Holmes examined the door, his keen eyes missing nothing. He dusted for fingerprints, his skepticism growing with each passing moment. As he suspected, there were prints inside the door but none outside. Beatrice hadn't been abducted. She had left. He requested to follow Beatrice's usual path, dismissing Leighton's offer to accompany them. The maid, however, proved to be a valuable asset. She led them through the manicured gardens and into the shelter of a dense cedar forest. As they walked, Holmes noticed the maid's nervous fidgeting, her constantly shifting gaze. He sensed she knew more than she was letting on. "Is there something you'd like to share with us?" he asked gently. The maid hesitated, then confessed that Beatrice didn't get along with her father. "He was a harsh man," she murmured, barely audible above the rustling leaves. Beatrice found solace in nature, escaping her family's suffocating expectations. She would often disappear for hours, seeking refuge in a meadow on the far side of the estate. "And on rainy days like today?" Watson asked. The maid smiled wistfully. "She would come out here and sit under the trees reading. She loved the rain. She wasn't afraid of it." Holmes thanked the maid and sent her back to the house, assuring her that their investigation would continue. He and Watson continued towards the meadow, Holmes allowing himself a moment to savor the scent of the damp earth, the sound of the rain falling through the trees. As they emerged into the meadow, Holmes paused, taking a deep breath. It was a breathtaking sight, a vibrant tapestry of wildflowers, their colors intensified by the rain. Lupins, daisies, roses, all blooming in a riot of beauty. It felt as if they had stepped into a painting, a world of peace and tranquility. They walked slowly, carefully avoiding crushing the delicate blossoms. "What are we looking for?" Watson asked, his gaze sweeping across the landscape. Holmes's eyes lit up as he spotted a stream winding its way through the meadow. "That stream," he replied. As they approached the stream, Holmes closed his eyes, allowing himself to be enveloped by the sounds of nature, the gentle patter of the rain, the chirping of birds, the murmur of the water. He breathed deeply, feeling a sense of calm wash over him. When he opened his eyes, he spotted something beneath a large tree, a small wooden boat, partially hidden by the foliage. They hauled the boat out of the water, revealing a worn, weathered vessel. Inside, they found a small tin box. Holmes's heart quickened as he opened the box. It contained a sum of money, but more importantly, a folded napkin bearing the emblem of a spotted owl. A symbol. A clue. He smiled, signaling to Watson to launch the boat. Watson, bewildered, obeyed. They climbed aboard and began to drift downstream, the current carrying them gently along. The trees overhead formed a canopy, shielding them from the worst of the rain. The rhythmic splash of their oars was hypnotic, lulling Holmes into a state of focused contemplation. The river widened, slowly transforming into a waterway that led towards a small, cozy village. The buildings were charming, built of brick and stone, adorned with flower boxes. But it was a small stone building at the end of the village, nestled beside the river and sheltered by willow trees, that caught Holmes's attention. A tavern. And above the door, a sign bearing the emblem of a spotted owl. They tied up the boat and entered the tavern, stepping into a warm, inviting space. The air was filled with the aroma of freshly baked bread and simmering stew. The tavern was dimly lit, with flickering lanterns casting dancing shadows on the walls. A few patrons were scattered around, quietly reading or lost in their own thoughts. The rain drummed against the tin roof, creating a soothing melody. Holmes and Watson approached the bartender, a kindly woman with a welcoming smile. Watson inquired about a young woman who often visited the tavern by boat. The bartender's face lit up. "You mean Rose?" Holmes's suspicions were confirmed. Rose. A pseudonym. A new identity. He learned that Rose often met a man named Oliver, a lighthouse keeper who lived on the coast. They would sit for hours, laughing, talking, whispering secrets. Every night, they would depart in opposite directions, their boats illuminated by lanterns. Holmes thanked the bartender and, with Watson in tow, continued their journey down the river. The river grew wider, eventually merging with the sea. They approached a rugged coastline, and in the distance, they saw it a lighthouse, standing sentinel against the stormy sky. As they drew closer, The scent of salt air and wood smoke filled their nostrils. They walked along the rocky beach, the rain now falling in a heavy downpour. They knocked on the door of the lighthouse, and it was opened by Beatrice herself, her face radiant with happiness. She wore simple clothes, her hair tied back in a practical bun. She looked free. She invited them inside, offering them fresh rosemary bread and a steaming bowl of chowder. As they ate, Holmes carefully steered the conversation, learning about Beatrice's new life. She spoke of her garden, her husband's dedication, her plans to raise chickens and sheep. She was a woman transformed, a woman who had found peace and purpose in a simple life. Holmes knew he had to reveal the truth, to explain why they had come. Beatrice listened quietly, tears welling up in her eyes. "I wanted a simple life," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "A life free of obligations, free of expectations. I wanted to be myself, without having to pretend, without having to conform." She paused, looking at Holmes with a newfound strength. "And I have that here with Oliver. It's all I've ever wanted." Holmes reached across the table and gently squeezed her hand. "Then that is what you shall have," he said softly. He rose, thanking her for her hospitality. He wouldn't reveal her location to her father, wouldn't shatter her newfound happiness. The journey back to Baker Street was silent. Holmes knew he had a difficult conversation ahead of him, but he also knew he had done the right thing. He had solved the mystery, not by finding a missing person, but by understanding a yearning heart. He sat in his office, listening to the crackling fire, the drumming rain. He closed his eyes, picturing Beatrice bathed in the warm glow of the lighthouse lamp, finally at peace. And for a moment, he felt a flicker of envy, a longing for a similar simplicity. The cardinal chirped outside his window, a small splash of color against the gray. Holmes smiled. Perhaps, just perhaps, tomorrow he would take a walk in the rain.